Okay, so good morning. You've had a pretty big week this week. You've had the Microsoft Reactor. You've had
Yes.
confirmation that you're a finalist in not one but two more awards. I love it. What categories are they, Gill?
The left-hand one is information technology, and the right-hand one is small business champion, influential woman. So
Wow,
one's Opsis and one's Gill.
Wow, well, congratulations. Massive achievements. And that's for the new Australian Women's Small Business Champion Awards. Try and remember that one.
It's a mouthful, isn't it? And I think I've told various people with those 5 words in every order you can put them in, just about.
I know. I've done the same. So I was lucky enough to be able to join you at the Microsoft Reactor early in the week. And you presented beautifully about the importance of scoping. I, of course, joked about how it's almost like entering a new relationship. You've got to do your research. You've got to do your groundwork. You have to dot your I's and cross your T's, and also know what the end game is before you actually start.
And one of the stories that I sometimes tell, and it's not one that I shared on Tuesday, is the idea of going on a journey. If you just decide, hey, Louise, why don't we go on a trip today, and you all go and jump in the car, it's probably not going to be very successful. You need to work out where you're going to get, where you're going to end up, what do you need to get from here to there? Is this journey something we can walk? Do we go by car? Do we need to book flight tickets? Would train be better? Do we need to take spare fuel? Do we need a tent? Should we book some hotels? And there's a million other things I could throw out there. But they're all questions that you and your fellow travelers need to address if you're going to get to that end point at the time and in the way that you anticipate. And of course, question 1 is, do you all anticipate going to the same place and getting there at the same time and in the same way? Because if you're not in agreement of any of those, there's going to be fights breaking out.
And look, it's so important, isn't it? I love that analogy. It's all well and good. We've all been holiday starved because of, Auntie Rona coming to visit. And it's so great to be able to go, yes, let's go on a trip. Well, exactly. Are we going to the snow? Are we going to Hawaii? What are we packing? And what do we need when we get there? And I loved your point the other day when you were talking about just to, much like a family, when you go on a family holiday, to think about all the things that each party wants from that holiday, much the same when you're implementing a new CRM, what sales or finance or, procurement, what the team need on a whole.
And even subdivisions within those. I mean, you've said sales and finance and procurement, and I could add some more to it.
Yeah.
And they're all right. But there are groups. So there's even groups that maybe don't have names within the business. There's those few people that sit over there and always talk and have coffee together. And then there's those that are over there that don't drink coffee but do go out for smokos. As 2 possible examples. And again, we could come up with another dozen or more of those.
Yeah, I love that. Just a reminder that it's not just we need a CRM, quick, let's plug and play. We need to really think about that scoping process. So when in the project should people start thinking about business intelligence? At what stage?
Well, the best time to start thinking about business intelligence is at the beginning as part of the scoping. And the second best time is right now, today.
Yeah, I love that. And I say that as well with marketing. You know, when people say, oh, you know, I should have got started sooner. Well, you haven't. And unless we meet up with Marty McFly in the DeLorean and go back in time, we can't change the past, but we can impact today and everything before that, which is so important.
Yes.
So what are the challenges that you find when business intelligence is not considered early enough in a project?
I think the challenges are, and it comes back to what you said earlier, Louise, when you don't know what you want to get out, you can't work out what you should put in. So I would say the biggest issue is that then other design decisions are taken, and particularly those design decisions that affect the data structure. And then later on, someone says, oh, we need a report to do whatever that report needs to do. And those data structure decisions are such that you can't get that report. So that's one reason why those outputs, and I'm using the word report in a very non-technical way, they need to be considered very early on. And one of the things, and you'll recall this, Louise, that I talked about on Tuesday was inputs and outputs. And a lot of people, when they do scoping, focus very much on the input. So what do our users enter? Where does that information come from? What, and various related questions. But they don't think of the outputs. And I swapped those over for the audience on Tuesday night and explained why. Consider the outputs first, and then make sure you've got the right inputs in order to create those outputs. And I highlighted that with Alice and the Cheshire Cat, and then in a more business focused way with Stephen Covey.
Yeah.
And most people will have known one or other of those quotes.
Yeah, and I love that example of Alice and the Cheshire Cat. So obviously we're referring to Alice in Wonderland, and to sort of paraphrase that example, Alice is like, well, how do I get to where I want to go? And the Cheshire Cat was like, well, where do you want to go? And she's like, well, I don't know. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. So unless you've got that end game in mind, then there's absolutely, you know, you're not plotting that course and planning appropriately, which is so important. I loved your point the other day when you're talking
the journey we talked about earlier. All comes back to the same thing.
So why would you say business intelligence and data extraction or a data analysis is so important? What are your thoughts on that?
It then comes back to my favorite 3-letter word, why. So why are you putting this CRM solution in the first place? And then what do you want that CRM solution to do for you? And that will come down to the outputs. So if you want to be able to manage your sales, most people will.
Sorry, just double backed for a second there. Have you got me?
I've got you. I'm just wondering
right.
Who else is talking in the room. It sounds very like my echo, but
yeah, it was actually. I was like, what's going on here? So maybe the universe maybe we have 2 Gill Walkers. Now that would solve a lot of problems.
Let's not propose that one to my husband. He might not be too happy.
Well, the clients definitely would, because I mean, you are one of the busiest women that I know. You had an amazing time overseas. Obviously just jumping off business intelligence for a moment. And one of the things that I found so inspiring about your 3 months away was you were not only growing your business, 5 months, pardon me, thank you. You were not only growing your business and consulting and training and learning yourself, but you were then also seeding a little bit of family time in there, seeing multiple countries. But, you know, I think there was correct me if I'm wrong, 7 or 8 different countries that you were training and facilitating people in during that time.
I think actually it was more than that, but I couldn't give you a number. But it was, of course, all virtual. So I often had people from 4 or 6 countries effectively sitting on my father's dining room table, and I was talking and questioning, and they were learning, I hope.
Yeah, well, and isn't that great? Isn't that great that we're able to? Isn't that great that we are able to do that in this current day now? So go under general. There you are. There you are. Welcome back. Oh my gosh, I was doing
different camera. One failed. We reached for another one.
I love it. I love it.
Could have done, but
it's totally fine. Well, I was chatting to. We've got a couple of people. We've got a couple of people online. So, yeah, I was just talking in regards to the foundation and the importance of the foundation when you're then implementing. Would you like to expand on that, Jill?
That scoping is the foundation, not only because it comes first, but because from that scope, you then know what needs to be built, what needs to be tested, and what needs to be trained. And so if the scoping isn't done, you've then got, well, what do the builders or the developers build? Well, who knows? They're not mind readers. And what should the testers, whoever they are, test? And then what should we train the users? And another one that I really like is that old bugbear of scope creep. Well, scope creep is bad news for everyone in the project. However, how can you point the finger at scope creep when there was no scope to begin with?
Yeah, great point. And I think what you're talking about there as well is that training element, because as we know, in any organization, there's multiple people at multiple different skill levels, and to be able to then impart that knowledge, create the training, and share the education is so key. So where do you find that should come into the process?
Right the way through. There are so many different aspects of education, and all of them play a part in a successful project outcome. So I would always, early on in the project, I do what I like to call envisioning education. And that is explaining to key people, not everyone in the organization, not all the users, but key people, those people who are able to then take that and apply it to their business, take the benefit and use it when they're thinking about their inputs and outputs and processes. But that envisioning education is all about what the technology offers out of the box. Once you've decided on a technology and you've budgeted for those licenses, however they're sold, you've got a lump of functionality. And you've already got that. So in your scoping, you don't need to worry about itemizing what you've already got. What the scoping needs to do is talk about the bits that are missing, the gaps, and how can we fill those effectively, cost effectively, and in a way that works for the users. So that is envisioning education, and it empowers the decision makers to make better decisions.
Yeah, great. Now, so is this why you think that sometimes users struggle with the business intelligence and data analysis tools in Microsoft Dynamics 365?
Without doubt that a lot of them, well, there's a whole heap of reasons, but staying on the theme of education, if you've not been shown and taught how to extract the information that you need from CRM, whatever technology you're using, for sure you're going to find it difficult. None of us were born knowing how to do advanced find, how to set charts up, how to establish goals, and a whole range of other stuff. But most of them are reasonably straightforward if A, the users needing them have been given the relevant training, and B, if the structure of the product is such that we can do the business intelligent tricks anyway. So, for example, if we've made poor database structure decisions earlier on, it may well be that there are some reports that are now completely impossible to get out. And I've seen that. A very simple example, not really around reporting, but anybody on the call who has used Advanced Find will be aware that that is a way that you can go into Dynamics and pull out all of those records, whether those records are contacts or accounts or leads or opportunities or cases or something else. Pull out all of the records that meet certain criteria. So it might be all the accounts that are in Sydney CBD with a postcode of 2000, to give a very simple example.
Yeah,
well, this particular project that I'm thinking of, someone had gone in and had relabeled all the fields on the form so they were different to the fields that Advanced Find was using. So if we continue with that simple example, we want all accounts where the postcode is 2000. Who would have thought that you have to use business type in order to get postcode out? Well,
yeah, of course.
That's not exactly what was going on in this case, but it is similar. And you could never teach users to use that sort of environment.
Yeah, I love that. Now we've got a question from Sam, who's watching on Facebook. So thank you, Sam. So Sam asks, how do I know what I need? I often feel like I need a doctor for my CRM and almost have a checkup. How do you know? Like, do you have a service or something that you can come in and assist people?
Oh, certainly. So for someone in that sort of situation, Sam, I would probably recommend our health check. And in the health check, I'll be talking to you about your why. So why do you have CRM? Why did you put it in the first place? And I will also ask those same why questions. Why do you want what you think you want? So you might say, well, I want to know the profit of a sale. Now, superficially, it's obvious, but I'm still going to ask you, why do you want to know the profit? Because the reason that you want to know the profit may well affect how I answer that within CRM for you.
Yeah, great point. Great point.
So it always comes back to the why.
So the other day you came up with a really great acronym that I just loved, and it was WORM. Can you share a little bit more about the WORM?
Oh, yes, I love Worm, and I wish I'd known this was coming. I'd have had his portrait available. He's a very handsome worm.
Sorry, I like to keep you on your toes. Well, being
yes.
CRM Success Catalyst that you are, you're on the ball.
So WORM means or stands for write once, read many. WORM. And if we drill into that in a little more detail, what I am saying is that every single data element that you want to get into your CRM should be entered or written once, by one person and then should be passed or transmitted by the system, not by people, to all the places that it's needed.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
that it
And
can be read many
yeah,
times.
it reminds me very much of a saying that, maybe your mum or grandma used to say, but mine definitely did, which was measure twice and cut once. Once you cut the fabric, if you're cutting it a couple of mils short, that's it. It's ruined. So
Yes.
it's definitely really important. I love that. Write once, read many. So how do businesses, when they're implementing, how do they save cost on data migration? Do you have any tips?
I think for that one, we need to first of all define cost, because of course there is the cost of the organization who are doing the migration for you.
Mm-hmm.
There is the cost of your own people. And related to both of those, there is the cost in time. But if we move away from that level of detail, I would say, first of all, make sure that the data that you're giving to the implementer is as perfect as possible. So make sure that we don't have duplicates. Make sure that where we've got values that later on we're going to want to report on, that they are identical. So technology is often very stupid and it does exactly what it's told. So to continue with that same example that I gave you earlier, we want all the accounts in Sydney CBD with a postcode of 2000.
Yeah.
If we've got some of those accounts where the address is Sydney, some where the address is Sid, because some user got tired and didn't put the last three letters in. Somewhere we've got a postcode of 2000, somewhere maybe we had an American intern for a while and they prefaced the 2000 with a 0 because that's how it would be done in the US. All of those are going to cause problems when we're moving that data into a CRM solution and later on when we want to get it out. So it's well worth investing time early on, that you look at the data, that you cleanse it, and then, well, depending on where it's being migrated from into CRM, quite often it will need to go through an intermediate tool. And as intermediate tools, a very common one that's used is Excel. But we've got a problem with a project that I'm part of at the moment, where in taking the data from their old system into Excel, it lost all the leading zeros on phone numbers. Now, that's a mistake in how the extraction was done for sure. But if that's not picked up at the Excel level and people just glibly bring that data back in, we've then got however many contacts with essentially incorrect phone numbers. Because as we all know, if you try dialing someone's mobile without the 0, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah, great point. And I was having a chat with someone recently and they have invested quite a considerable sum into a CRM. And then when they were looking at the data, they were like, well, hang on a minute, there's no address field here. And then the person that was implementing it were like, oh, you didn't say you needed the address. Now, there's got to be, of course, they may not have asked for that, but of course, in the position of someone who's implementing it, that scoping and that questioning time is so key. And so is that best done through a workshop? Do you think it's best done face to face? What's the practicals of that process?
I much prefer doing it in a workshop with representatives of different areas of the business who will be ultimately using what we deliver through CRM. And probably the biggest reason that I like to do it in a workshop with several people is I want the organization as a group to work out what that organization needs. I don't see it as my job to talk to one person and find out that ABC features are important. Talk to the next person and find out that they want ACE. Talk to the next person and find that they want BDH. And so it goes on. And then for me, as an outsider to the business, to be left trying to work out, well, what of that alphabet soup is most important, is most useful to this business. It is far better if the business themselves work that out. However, I will be facilitating. So let's say we've got inbound and outbound sales.
So, it's great, the wonderful world of technology.
Yes, at least I now know what it's doing, so I can fix it more quickly, but I don't know why it's doing it. So going back to the inbound and the outbound sales, maybe the inbound people don't see the importance of postal addresses because all of their work is coming from the outside world in to them. And whether it's coming in by phone call or in by email or in by hard copy letter doesn't really matter. The fact remains those individuals do not need postal address. However, the outbound people may very well need to send a letter to the client somewhere through the process. So they will need outbound address. So I leave it for representatives of those two groups to talk, and for inbound to say, well, we don't need address. It takes up a lot of space on the form. And outbound to say, oh, but we do. We have to send them a letter. And then we can come up with a compromise that might be a different form to be used by inbound and outbound. It might be that inbound just have to put up with having the address there, but at least they know the importance. And there's probably other reasons as well.
Yeah, so important, so important. Now, earlier you spoke about envisaging, empowering education. I think I got those three words the right way.
Yes.
Fingers crossed.
Or envisioning education is empowering because it enables you to, there's another E, to make the right decisions for your CRM going forward because you've got the understanding.
And I love that because, sometimes in a role, sometimes people inherit a role. They're the last man standing. Sometimes they have a certain title, a certain acronym, and maybe, the people that are within the team are delivering the project. They know the granular detail where the upper echelon may not have that finite knowledge. So being able to deliver that empowering type of education for everyone at all different levels is so important.
It is. And coming back to education, we talked about that envisioning education that goes up front. I also, where necessary, and it's necessary more often than people might realize, like to include technical education so that we know that everybody in the technical team has that breadth of understanding. When that understanding is missing within a technical team, you run the risk of every problem being made to look like a nail because the tool that you have is a hammer. In other words, every problem is solved by, for example, adding yet another field. Now, that may work, but on the balance of probability, adding a field is not the best way to solve that problem. And even if we do add a field so that we can capture some data, are we adding it in the right place? So an example I use in some of my technical training is a user comes to you and says, we need a field for age on the opportunity form. Well, anyone that's known me more than 5 minutes will know that the very next word out of my mouth with that one is why. So why do you need a field for age on the opportunity form? Typically, that will then lead us down a conversation that, yes, maybe if you're selling something, if you're selling guns or insurance or fireworks or any one of a number, alcohol, cigarettes, a number of other things, you're not allowed legally to sell those below a certain age. So you need the age, or you can only sell certain types of them to people of certain ages. However, age of a person never sits on the opportunity. It should go on the customer, because it's the customer who is 15 or 21 or 35 or 93. It's not the opportunity. And then we need to look, well, do we actually want age or do we want date of birth? Because while, yes, I'm 21 today, but in a few years' time, when maybe I'll come back and do a second purchase with you, I probably won't be 21.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got my date of birth, then you will know, sure, I'm 21 today, but in a few years' time, maybe I'll be 24 or 30 or whatever.
And that's a great point, because sometimes people want to create a field like the age field, where actually there's the date of birth field that's already there.
Absolutely.
And they're not only doubling up, but the field that they're investing time in creating is actually going to be redundant as soon as they enter the information. So rubbish in, rubbish out, which is often the case. So just looking at the time, exactly. How can people get in touch with you? And is there anything that you would like to, while we've got capturing people's attention, is there anything that you would like to promote or give a call to action for people to get in touch?
Well, just to remind people that the whole business intelligence, the reporting, the querying, the analyzing of your data does need to be considered very, very early on. If it is an afterthought, it will probably not work for you. And one of the things that I offer that helps with that is a business intelligence course. So that is a 2-day course. And in those 2 days, I take you through most of the tools that Microsoft Dynamics 365 gives you for seeing and analyzing data. So if we just run through them, we can search data. We have views of data. We can use filtering to get data that meets particular things. We can do charts that gives us a visual summary of that data. We can combine lots of those onto a dashboard that then gives us an at a glance, how is the business doing right now? And all of those and the others that I'm going to mention are real time. So a sale that has only been won 5 minutes ago or less will be on the dashboard. Yeah, and then we've got a whole range of reports, and reports themselves. There are nice, simple reports, and Dynamics gives us a wizard that we can step through. But if those don't meet your needs, you can then go on and get somebody with the appropriate skills to do SQL Server reporting services reports or SSRS reports. And all of those can then be used once they're in place to run a meeting, so typically a sales meeting, can be run off a dashboard and the data that's behind it. And that, of course, saves time because your users are not having to produce their weekly report, which often is a spreadsheet, so that you can then go through and say, right, so this person sold $10,000, this person's sold $25,000 worth of products, or this week the pink widgets did really well. Next week, maybe it'll be the blue fandangos that do really well, and so on. All of those things are just there, coming straight out of Dynamics, out of the same data that was put in so that you could process that sale, package up whatever the client wants, and deliver it to them. No extra work. One of my clients said to me about a decade ago that their users really loved some of the reports that we'd written because they got back maybe half a day a week each to spend talking to clients, because they just did their job, and out of the back of CRM fell these beautiful reports. No effort required.
And that's key, isn't it? You're then, as a business, investing that time at the start, but you're saving time, energy, effort, money, resources, labor, compiling reports, and then people have got the time to actually serve customers, assist, support, and even work on other areas of business growth, etc. So look, Gill, it's always a pleasure to chat to you. I love talking CRM. I just love celebrating the wins. You've had so many wins in this year. So, I'm always cheering you on, and I just loved catching up with you today. And I look forward to diving in for another cup of tea, or maybe an afternoon session for a glass of wine.
Now that you've got me interested. I don't have to get up early, and a glass of red. That would suit me down the wire.
Perfect. Well, we'll do that next time. We'll have, we'll leave the cup of tea and we'll have a glass of wine, and we'll whine about some of the issues that you find when people don't scope and investigate properly, lay that foundation. So thanks again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have an amazing day.
Thank you.